Well, good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining today's press conference on the importance of investment in workforce development. Chairman Scott, you may now begin.
People are still coming in. People are still coming in. Yeah. Thank you. And I want to thank Secretary Walsh and Deputy Secretary Martin for taking time out of their schedules to join us. And I want to thank all of today's speakers for their dedication to investing in workers and building back a better economy. We'll each say a few words and then take questions. Our nation's workforce development system, from registered apprenticeships to youth employment programs, have always been critical tools to helping workers access new and rewarding careers. Unfortunately, it has never received the level of funding necessary to meet the needs of workers, businesses, and communities. While Congress has delivered urgent relief to Americans across the country through multiple COVID relief packages, there is yet to be any meaningful investment in our workforce development system in any of these packages. As a result, local workforce boards do not have the resources to meet the surge in demand for quality training opportunities, and employers are struggling to find high-skilled workers. We know that nearly 7 million jobs were lost during the pandemic that have not come back yet, and many essential workers and low-wage jobs are tired of putting up with long hours for little pay. This means millions of workers are seeking the competitive skills necessary for finding good-paying jobs and sustainable careers. Our entire public workforce system exists to help workers gain the experience and support that they need to access careers in high-demand sectors. And if we want to help workers go back to work, and if we want to help local businesses grow, then we must ensure that future legislative packages invest in workforce development programs. The American Jobs Plan calls for $100 billion in workforce development programs, including funding to support dislocated workers, funding to create 1 to 2 million new apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeship opportunities, and funding to target opportunities towards underserved individuals, including women and people of color. These proposals reflect legislation that I introduced, the National Apprenticeship Act and the Relaunching America's Workforce Act, that invest billions to expand the registered apprenticeship program and help workers re-enter the workforce. Each person on this call understands the power that our workforce development system has to help workers develop new skills, build new careers, and access economic mobility. And as we recover from COVID-19, Congress must invest in quality workforce development programs to build back an economy in which everyone has access to these life-changing opportunities. Now it is my honor to turn it over to a strong advocate for workforce training and a dedicated champion for our nation's workers, the former mayor of Boston, and Secretary of the United States Department of Labor, Marty Walsh.
Thank you very much, Chairman Scott. I appreciate that nice introduction. It's great to be with you, Senator Klobuchar, again, and Rep. Bonamici. It's great to see you, and great chat we had the other day. I want to just say that, as the chairman mentioned, we're here today to talk about why we're investing in our nation's workforce, and that's really essential to building back better. I want you just to take a moment to think about the time we're living in right now. The pandemic took away 22 million jobs, basically stopped a generation of young people from beginning their adult working lives. It set women's labor participation back by a generation. It hit communities of color the hardest, and that's built on decades of systemic exclusion. We see it every month in the unemployment data since I've been here and even long before that. We have long-term unemployment hurting the whole communities and regions in rural America, folks with disabilities, veterans, and other people. At the same time, the nature of this work is changing. Technology is advancing rapidly. We're preparing to modernize infrastructure across every state in the union. We want to create millions of good union and prevailing wage jobs. Our country has never needed a workforce training investment more than it does at this moment in time right now. And yet our workforce accounts have been flat funded for a decade since budget sequestration was enacted. I just want to repeat that our nation's workforce investments has not increased in a meaningful way in over a decade. As mayor of the city of Boston, I talk to businesses all the time about the need for investing in workforce development. As Secretary of Labor, I see it. What all of this means is that reality is that we're falling behind the pace of change in the global competition. As President Biden has said, we are at an inflection point. This is a moment in history that demands bold action. And it's exactly why the president proposed in his Build Back Better agenda, he calls for an investment of $100 billion in proven workforce development programs targeted to workers, employers, and communities that need them the most. In the Department of Labor, we're prepared to bring these investments to the American workforce. We're laying the groundwork by scaling up strategies for that work in registered apprenticeships for infrastructure jobs in key industries like manufacturing, cybersecurity, and healthcare, in sector-based training, investments that will help small and medium businesses hit the hardest in the pandemic and help them access the talent they need. In community colleges, workforce training programs. We need to make sure we continue to grow them. I've been going all over the country. I've toured, I think, 17 states in the last 2 months. And when I go to the community colleges, they're ready. They're ready to educate the workers of the future. We just need to continue to help them. We career and technical education programs in our high schools, reentry opportunities for justice-involved returning citizens. We're ready to invest in our nation's workforce system and make sure it's an engine of opportunity and equity in our economy. At this moment in time, we simply can't afford half measures. We need to offer not just some folks, but everyone the tools they need to work and thrive. And not in just some communities, in every community. We need to draw on everyone's ounce of talent in our country, build our future to be truly competitive. And that's how we're going to meet this historic moment. And that's why we're asking Congress to advance the president's full proposed investment in the American workforce. And now I have the great opportunity to turn over to Deputy Secretary of Education, Cindy Martin.
Thank you so much, Secretary Walsh. I really appreciate this, and thank you for having me today. Thank you, Chairman Scott, as well, for your leadership and your innovation in this space. I'm thrilled to join you today on behalf of the Department of Education and Secretary Cardona. Here at the department, we are committed to expanding and enhancing career pathways for all of our students as we build a workforce that meets the demands and the opportunities that we see in the 21st century. Career and technical education provides critical opportunities for students of all ages to develop the knowledge and the skills that are required to succeed in our economy. So as a part of the American Jobs Plan, the Biden-Harris administration has proposed a game-changing $10 billion investment in CTE through the Expanded Career Pathways for Middle and High School Students program. We're challenging local communities to reinvent middle school and high school so that they can better prepare all students for the future of work. This $10 billion investment would provide underrepresented students more equitable access to high quality CTE opportunities in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and connect those students to career pathways that lead to quality jobs in in-demand sectors. The proposal will allow us to scale best practices and yield better results for both students and also our workforce by providing evidence base for the successful programs. This also supports existing Perkins investments, and it encourages states to use their Perkins dollars on evidence-based approaches to CTE. Middle school is a critical time to expose our students to the full breadth of opportunities that's awaiting them in the workforce. It's a time to feed their curiosities and develop their passions. So grounded in experiential and hands-on learning, middle introduces students to a wide array of careers, and it positions them to make more informed educational choices and eases their transition when they go to high school. And then in high school, high quality CTE leads to improved academic outcomes, higher high school graduation rates, and seamless transitions into colleges and careers. By demonstrating the real world application of academic and technical skills, CTE programs improve student connectivity, motivation, and their achievement. Students then have the opportunity to practice skills in work-based settings that include apprenticeships. Take studying math, for example. When you study math in the context of building an airplane, suddenly something that was theoretical becomes very real to our students. And in addition, dual enrollment will allow high school students to get a leg up by earning college credit in-demand industry credentials. Research shows that high quality CTE programs lead to increased high school graduation rates, increased college enrollment, and even higher earnings. For example, there's one model that resulted in a substantial earnings gain of 11% for CTE students. In fact, 48 out of 50 states, in addition to DC, had higher high school graduation rates for CTE students. And it's critical that those opportunities are available to all students, particularly those who haven't historically had the opportunities afforded by these great programs. This is the opportunity before us in the President's Build Back Better agenda. It is an historic investment in our children, in our economy, and in our country's future. Thank you. And I'm now honored to introduce Senator Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Deputy Secretary, for laying out why this is so important from an education standpoint. Thank you, Chair Scott, for leading the way for so long, and I've enjoyed visiting you in Virginia. Secretary Walsh, I'm still getting used to your Boston accent. When you said hardest hit, I thought you said hottest hit, and I kept thinking that's an interesting way to say it. Tracy Tapani, thank you. I've been to your incredible company, and I'll introduce you when I'm concluding here. And Congresswoman Bonamici, thank you for your wonderful work, as well as Andy Van Clunen with National Skills Coalition. So I think we're all here for the same reason, to rebuild our workforce, move our country forward. And I think we know that we had an issue with this even before the pandemic. The numbers weren't there for the number of people going into the areas of work where we knew we were going to have openings. And I believe ours should be a country where we make stuff, where we invent things, where we export to the world. And right now we know we have workforce shortages in certain areas, good paying jobs that we want to fill and that we do want to fill to make sure our workers are part of the 21st century economy. President Biden has shown that he is willing to be a partner in making this happen. He supports investing, as noted, $100 billion in proven workforce development programs like skills training and apprenticeship. I think we all know that in the next 10 years, we're not going to have a shortage of sports marketing degrees. We're going to have a shortage of plumbers. We're going to have a shortage of carpenters. We're going to have a shortage of electricians, nurses, nursing assistants. I can speak to this from the heart. I wouldn't be here today except that my grandparents who never graduated, my grandpa never graduated from high school, sent my dad to a two-year community college, son of an iron ore miner. And from there, he went to the University of Minnesota. My own sister didn't graduate from high school. She ended up working in manufacturing, getting her GED, getting a two-year degree, and then going on to be an accountant, which she still is today. Investing in skills training, and particularly apprentice training right now, is good for workers and good for our economy. A study by the Midwest Economic Policy Institute found that every dollar spent on apprenticeship programs in my home state increases our GDP by $21. I have very fond memories of visiting high school students and seeing them put together an automatic pool ball sorter that they learned in their apprentice program, and so many other things. We've got to make this exciting, and we've got to make it a good paying job. And with that, I want to introduce someone who gives so many people those good paying jobs, and that's Tracy Tapani. She is actually the co-president of Wyoming Machine, which is a precision sheet metal fabrication business in Minnesota. I got to see her firsthand on the factory floor. She provided her workers with the training they needed to make equipment during the pandemic, like ventilators, packaging for coronavirus tests. And I would match her against any CEO in the country for the best boots on the factory floor. With that, I give you Tracy.
Thank you so much, Senator Klobuchar, for your nice welcome. And I want to say a special thank you to Chairman Scott for hosting this event today, because this is such an important topic. I want to start my remarks with just asking everyone who is listening or watching this event today to think back to April, May, and June of last year, when American manufacturing and skilled workers across the board rose up, adapted, and fulfilled needs for supplies like ventilator components, test kits, developing pharmaceuticals. All people in skilled trades, besides people that work in our healthcare system, did an amazing job of making sure that we stayed protected and safe here in the United States, and we could manage our way through the COVID pandemic. Now is not the time to forget the skilled workers that really helped our country out during that very difficult time. Securing our economy and economic future requires innovative and growing manufacturing sector, and that's the sector that I'm here to talk about today. Labor shortages that we have been dealing with for more than a decade have only gotten worse because of the health crisis that our country has been in. As a manufacturing leader who's been working to advocate for workforce investment for more than a decade, I can tell you that I talk to manufacturers, employees, skilled workers throughout Minnesota and around the country that are frustrated about the fact that we have had such a difficult time getting important bills to pass that can support our workforce system. And so I'm going to urge you today to really think about that and consider what we can do to invest in the United States. The investments in workforce development proposed in the American Jobs Plan are urgently needed to ensure that we have the capacity to train workers and fill open positions. Manufacturers and skilled trade organizations across the country do their own internal training, but the workforce development system ensures that we have a pipeline and gives us access to people that are ready to get to work and to continue furthering their skills so that they can advance in their careers and continue to earn good wages and have a good livelihood as they enter careers in these industries. The other thing that I want to touch on today is that we have, I think, a really unique opportunity at this time to consider equity in these investments. I come from the manufacturing sector, as I've already said, and I've been in the industry for more than 25 years. And, as I come towards the end of my career and know how hard I have worked during the 25 years that I've been in the industry to promote women in manufacturing, as well as trying to remove barriers that people of color face to entering manufacturing jobs, now is the right time to invest in equitable solutions to diversify manufacturing and other industries that have not seen that kind of diversity in their workforce over the 25 years that I have been in the industry. I can tell you that based on the data that's available right now, I'm going to leave the manufacturing industry when I retire in maybe 10 years from now, and we are not going to see any change at all in the number of women that work in this industry or the number of people of color that are working in the metals manufacturing industry. And hopefully you can recognize how passionate I am about that topic. And if I leave you with anything today, it's that we have to make those investments and we have to diversify for the strength of manufacturing. So I'm happy right now to turn it over to Congresswoman Bonamici.
Well, thank you so much, Tracy, for that kind introduction and for your powerful message. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. We really do need to recognize the needs of workers and their families and support them as we build back better. And I'm very grateful for this partnership. Secretary Walsh, Chairman Scott, Senator Klobuchar, of course, Deputy Secretary Martin, Department of Education. Tracy, thank you. And Andy from the National Skills Coalition. We have this amazing opportunity right now because we were able to secure $100 billion for workforce development in the American Jobs Plan. And it couldn't come at a more important time. We've already heard today why that's so. It's projected that as many as 7 million jobs may not return to our communities after the pandemic. Far too many workers are now long-term unemployed, and enhanced unemployment benefits are set to expire this fall. So it's critical that we provide workers with access to quality, paid, on-the-job training and support services they need to get good paying, high-quality jobs. What a great investment. And as we just heard from Tracy, we also need to support workers who have historically faced barriers to employment, especially with color. And the best way to do that is to pass the American Jobs Plan with that $100 billion investment to help people get back to work and build back better. And I've seen the power of these programs in Northwest Oregon. And speaking with people who have gone through programs inspired me to fight for this robust investment in workforce development. I've had conversations with people in apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships over the years. They told me that the programs changed their lives and the future of their family. I'll never forget talking with Lacey. Of her registered apprenticeship, she said, it made it possible for me to pay my bills and feed my kid. And she added that she did not know where she would be without it. Registered apprenticeships provide workers with quality training, portable credentials, high wages, and importantly, support services like tools, work attire, transportation, childcare, and mentorship. And again, importantly, a pathway to a permanent job. So the American Jobs Plan will support these critical registered apprenticeships. Thank you to Chairman Scott for your leadership on the legislation, and also pre-apprenticeships at a time when thousands of people are unemployed or underemployed. And even before the pandemic, I spoke with people who they felt they just didn't have the skills they need to compete in today's economy. So this funding will help more people access the good infrastructure jobs, clean energy jobs, and manufacturing jobs, as Tracy mentioned, that the American Jobs Plan will help create. So in Northwest Oregon, we've seen the power of workforce investment to transform a local economy. An example is the Oregon Manufacturing Innovation Center, also known as OMIC. It's a collaboration that's bringing together industry leaders like Boeing with community colleges and other institutes of higher education to develop a registered apprenticeship program in advanced manufacturing. And I've seen high school students with their eyes wide open and they see the future ahead of them with this potential. So we must expand and increase access to registered apprenticeships, partnerships like OMIC, and more. Workforce boards, labor unions, community colleges, community-based organizations, small businesses, so many are out there training and supporting the unemployed and underemployed workers, but they are in urgent need of resources. The $100 billion workforce investment in the American Jobs Plan is what we need to meet this moment in our country's history. And I'll continue to work with Senator Klobuchar, of course, Secretary Walsh, Chairman Scott, and all of my colleagues and the stakeholders to pass the American Jobs Plan. Creating opportunities for workers to get the skills they need will benefit families, communities, and the economy, and it is how we build back better. So now I'm happy to turn it over to Andy Van Clunen with the National Skills Coalition.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And I just have to say, I'm so inspired by the passion and the expertise on this call today to kind of raise up how essential this investment in our people's skills is to building an inclusive economic recovery. This morning, we had an unexpected uptick in unemployment claims. So we are still close to 10 million working Americans who are out of work, who would like to go back to work. Over 3 million of them have permanently lost their jobs because of this pandemic. And that doesn't even count the 6.5 million folks who have dropped out of the workforce, but still would like to have a job if they thought there was a pathway to get back in. And these are the very people, disproportionately workers of color, low-wage workers, folks who never had an opportunity to get any kind of post-secondary education and training. They are the ones who are going to be permanently left behind by this economic recovery unless we invest in their futures now. And the $100 billion that folks have talked about in the American Jobs Plan, $100 billion investment in workforce training is the way it is that we're going to give those folks a chance to participate in what is going to be a very different post-pandemic economy than the one that we had before March 2020. And I'm so thankful to Chairman Scott and Congresswoman Bonamici and Senator Klobuchar and Secretary Walsh and Deputy Secretary Martin for all that they are doing to champion this $100 billion investment called for by President Biden in the American Jobs Plan. Unfortunately, too many times in the past when Washington has put together stimulus packages or transportation bills or other ways that we're trying to think about job creation, the thought about investing in worker training has kind of been something that's left off to the side or is not even done at all. We just assume that people who don't have jobs will get into those positions. And unfortunately, what happens is the very people who need those jobs the most. And in this context, the people who've been most impacted by this pandemic, low-income folks, workers of color, women who cannot get back into the workforce now because of child rearing needs. All of those folks, they are the ones who are not going to get access to the new jobs we're creating in manufacturing and clean energy and clean water and our various forms of construction and healthcare if we do not invest in their skills now. And that $100 billion investment called for in the American Jobs Plan has righted that wrong. We have decided that we're going to invest in people as well as in steel and bricks and mortar as part of how it is that we think about this economic recovery. And obviously, as you heard on today's call, there's widespread support. All of our industry leaders and labor leaders and community colleges and community organizations that are part of our coalition see this as essential. The American people sees this as essential as well. Our polling shows that 89% of voting Americans, Republican, Democratic, Independent, all think that Congress needs to invest substantially in workforce training as part of any job creation or infrastructure package. And that is what it is that folks today are championing, that $100 billion investment. To talk about negotiating that away, to not prioritize investments in workers and people the same way that we think about investing in steel and bricks and mortar. It's not just an insult to the American worker, it's positioning us for a slowed economic recovery as businesses who currently cannot find skilled workers are going to struggle to fill open positions. And so I thank everybody on this call today who is advocating for making sure that that $100 billion goes into the package that Congress is able to send to President Biden's desk. So thank you all. And let me turn things back over to Chairman Scott.
Well, thank you very much for all of our speakers. They've made the case for the need for this investment. That concludes the speaking part of our program. And now we'll take a few questions from members of the press. If you have a question, please click the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll take as many questions as we can. If you're asking a question, please indicate which member of the panel your question is directed to and your outlet, so we can get to as many questions as possible. Josh will be moderating from here and can call on reporters to ask questions. Josh?
Great. And at this time, you can use the raised hand function to ask a question. The first question comes in from our chat, and it is for all panelists, but specifically the House members. How would you assess the level of House support for workforce funding at this time?
Let me start by saying that there is significant support for in the House, particularly in light of the fact that a couple of members put a little letter together to encourage the funding at the $100 billion level, and they were quickly able to get 100 signatures on the letter. Just the logistics in getting those signatures is difficult. So getting that level of support that quickly, I think, is an indication of how much support there is. And I think in everybody's district, they recognize that a lot, they've been badgered by employers who are complaining that they can't find skilled workers. And this is the answer to that question.
I just agree with Chairman Scott, and as Andy noted, the public certainly supports this. So when our colleagues are back home listening to their constituents, I'm sure they're hearing broad support for these investments. People understand that this is an investment that helps workers and the economy.
Our next question comes from Andrew Krebaum.
Hi, thanks for doing the call. This is for Representative Scott or the other House members. Just wonder if you can comment on whether you would support a reconciliation package that doesn't include the $100 billion in workforce development that the White House called for, and also whether these funding levels could have any impact on the ongoing success of WIOA, which I understand talks are ongoing right now for a reauthorization bill.
Right, if we get a lot of the funding done in this bill, it would take the pressure off significant funding under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act. But your first question is, could I vote for a bill that doesn't include this significant investment? What we're doing today is hopefully ensure that the money's there. I am not going into any of these negotiations with the idea that it's my way or the highway. As you know, we have very thin majorities in the House and the Senate. And if enough people go in with my way or the highway, all you guarantee is a traffic jam on the highway. So that doesn't help anybody. But we're going to try. I think the case can be made that this investment is extremely important. And I certainly expect it to be in the final package.
And I agree with the Chairman Scott that we're going to do everything we can to make sure this very important investment is in any bill going forward. And we have to do what we can because, as I mentioned, this is such a good investment. And especially at this time in our country's history, it is the right time, it's the right amount, and it's the right investment.
Great. And then our next question from the chat is for all panelists. And the question, I'll paraphrase here, is whether the need for workforce development funding is a pandemic-related issue or whether this predates the pandemic.
I can take that one. Just knowing from which Tracy knows well from our state, maybe she can add something. We were having workforce shortages before the pandemic, and in certain areas, even during the pandemic. And so this is a problem we've seen coming for a while. And as was noted by Representative Scott at the beginning, this is a moment in time that we have to seize to finally do something about it. And some of it goes back to school, as the Education Deputy Secretary was talking about, that you've got to expose kids to these jobs and careers, and you also have to expose their parents to the possibilities. I've always noticed that some of our kids in areas like Thief River Falls, Minnesota, or Rochester, Minnesota, where Mayo is, IBM has their parents tend to work in those areas, and they know what the salaries will be if the kids do apprenticeships or do community college and goes into that. That's not always true in all areas of our state or the country. And so I think we need to up that exposure, and then we need to up the ability of both younger people and older people to do apprenticeships, and then the community college track as well. So I just see this, when you see the numbers, they're glaring in terms of the job openings we have, and it's matching the employees and future employees with the employers, and it'll be so much better for our country, so we can be a leader in manufacturing. And a lot of that is having the employees at the right place at the right time with all various levels of education and degrees. And just because you get an apprenticeship and go to work, or a 2-year degree and go to work, you can then further your education from there, and we want to make that easier as well.
And I think a lot of anybody in my area of Virginia, where we have a lot of shipbuilding, you couldn't find a welder anywhere in the state before the pandemic. Obviously, as we come back and we reopen, that same problem is going to be there. And you also have, as has been mentioned, millions of people who had jobs that have essentially evaporated. Those jobs don't exist anymore. The businesses either went out of business, or they've been able to figure out how to work with fewer employees, or because of the people working at home, you've got people who are servicing people who are coming downtown to work that aren't there. A lot of people, jobs just don't exist. These are people who are good, hard workers who, with proper skills training, can perform great jobs, but they can't do it without job training. And that's why these investments are so important.
If you don't mind my just chiming in from an employer's perspective on what's already been said, is that, employers have been advocating for workforce investment, no matter who is in the majority in Congress, no matter who is in the White House, year after year, term after term, administration after administration, employers are asking for these kinds of investments. And as I had said earlier, I think there's a lot of frustration about the fact that they don't move forward as quickly as they should. We are behind the 8 ball and we have catch up to do. And these investments are critically needed, not just for businesses, but for the people who are interested in working in the skilled trades. A lot of people would prefer to do jobs that have more physicality to them. I am a college educated person and I love nothing more than being able to go out in my plant sometimes and work with metals, work on equipment, because I'm a physical person who couldn't stand to sit at a desk all day long. And there's lots of people in the world like me. So it's not just about people that are in some other category that want physicality in their job. It includes college graduates and highly educated people, but they still need skills to do the kind of work we do.
And just briefly, we had challenges in Oregon before the pandemic. The pandemic exacerbated them. And that's true with the lack of diversity as well. We have Oregon Tradeswomen, a wonderful organization that helps support women to get jobs in the trades. So we have a higher than average number of women, but we still benefit from making these opportunities available to everyone, those including those historically left behind. So again, we had the challenges existed, they were exacerbated by the pandemic. And now as we're moving forward and we are going to see these wonderful jobs in infrastructure and transitioning to a clean energy economy, there's going to be so many opportunities, but people won't be able to get the jobs if they don't have the skills. So now is the time.
And our last question today comes from Michael Stratford.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Senator Klobuchar, can you talk about your sense of where workforce training money stands as the Senate reconciliation package comes together? Are you expecting the full $100 billion to be in that, or will you? Are you expecting less? And then, Chairman Scott, can you talk about where the $100 billion in workforce training money fits into your other priorities on education and labor in a reconciliation package?
Sure. I think, first of all, the initial infrastructure package, which is the bipartisan package, as you know, our focus is on that right now, while at the same time, we are negotiating the reconciliation package, which is the second part of Build Back Better. And that will include this workforce training in a big way. I can't give you the exact number, but obviously those of us on the call, and I know Secretary Walsh, who may want to chime in, are devoted to making that number as big and robust as possible. I've already talked to Senator Murray and many of those involved in this to make sure as we get as much as we can. And right now we are really positive about what's going on. We're continuing to make progress on the bipartisan package. And we got, as you know, a top line number on the reconciliation package, which is going to allow us to do the things Tracy's been waiting to have done, as I know, for administration after administration, in her words. And so I'm very positive about it. I can't give you an exact amount of money, but if we don't do something on apprenticeships in a big way, we're really going to be losing out on another generation that could fill these jobs we know we have now and are coming down the pike.
Yes, there are a lot of things in the family and jobs plans that come within the jurisdiction of the Committee on Education and Labor. Obviously, school construction is one of those priorities. But if you're going to have construction jobs, you have to have people that can get to work. That requires the job training and requires childcare, which is another major initiative, childcare and early childhood education, which is another major initiative within the jurisdiction of the committee.
You want to add anything, Secretary Walsh? I feel because you can be the tea leaf reader of the U.S. Senate, because you know.
I just think that everything that was said today by all the speakers is so important. I think we've heard from an employer who employs people and the need for job training. We've heard from congressional folks and Senate people. This is really important. I mean, I think that we're at a moment in time that we can make a tremendous difference in the workforce of America. We can also create pathways into the middle class. And we're going to continue, I'm going to continue to advocate with the Senate, with Senator Klobuchar and her colleagues, with Chairman Scott and Congresswoman Bonamici and their colleagues to really take advantage of this opportunity. And I think that, as I've said all along, this is not and Chairman Scott alluded to this about the razor thin margins in the House and the Senate. This is not a Democrat or Republican bill. This is about the American worker. And I think we owe it to the American worker, particularly after the last 16, 17 months of what we've seen in this country with the pandemic and the glowing opportunity, the opportunities that we have right now to really make some major advances and investments in people and skills and create opportunities. So I want to thank the press for being on today. Thank you for covering this. And I want to thank, in particular, the chairman and the senator and the rep for having me part of this conversation today.
Great. Thank you to all our attendees and participants today. And that concludes today's program.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
we
Thanks,
must-
everyone.
Thank you. Good seeing you, Senator.